Now entering Nerdist.com.
Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast, Episode 52, The Omega Glory.
We're staking our ground, and we're planting a flag. It's Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast, and we're not going anywhere. I'm John Champion.
And I'm Ken Ray. Today on the show that seeks out the morals, messages, and meanings of Star Trek, we've got a tribute to Old Glory. It's the Omega Glory, going into the Mission Log, or as I like to call it, Star Trek pre-insurrection.
I see what you did there.
You like that?
Yeah, it's a little foreshadowing.
Like 120 years after this episode, yeah, people are going to be busting a gut.
If there's one thing to learn, it's that if you're a Starfleet captain and you're dedicated to upholding the Prime Directive, Star Trek teaches us you get to throw all of that out the window when there's the promise of eternal youth.
No, you see, here's the thing, actually, and this is not this episode. Okay, this is not. We're not going to go ahead and sum up the episode right now, but I have noticed all throughout the original series, life prolongation will get you every time. Trying to extend life.
There's a lot of that.
Be you, Dr. Roger Corby. Be you, the scientists who wrecked Miri's planet. Be you, Captain Tracy. And I know people listening may not know who Captain Tracy is yet, but stay tuned. Trying to live forever, quickest way to death.
Yeah. Do not mess with Mother Nature.
Yeah, I guess not.
Yeah. So before we get into the nitty-gritty detail of Captain Tracy and where he goes wrong in the Omega Glory, how about I give you a little trivia?
Why not?
All right. So it is worth noting that the Omega Glory is one of the 3 original treatments considered for the second pilot of Star Trek. Obviously, the pilot was The Cage. And then when it came time to do their second pilot, they considered doing Where No Man Has Gone Before, which is what they ultimately went with, Mudd's Women, and the Omega Glory. Now, the story was written by Gene Roddenberry. It was rejected internally for the pilot because of its many story problems. And Bob Justman says that Gene was aware of the problems with the story, but it was later then submitted to NBC executive Stanley Robertson by producer of the second season, John Meredith Lucas. It was rejected again by the executives as the second draft wasn't different enough. Finally, they worked that out. They were able to get approval on the episode. Bob Justman says that he wrote a long memo about this episode directly to Gene, but he felt that it was too devastating to send. So he tore it up. He never sent the memo. He gave his comments in person, but that was it. That was all that he conversed with Gene about. And Gene ultimately submitted this story for an Emmy nomination. He did not get a nomination, but he submitted it for consideration.
Let me back up for a second.
Yeah, go right ahead.
He wrote it down. Yeah. He decided it was too rough, so he wanted to say it to his face.
Well, apparently he sugarcoated what he said to Gene's face.
Wow.
He
okay.
Gave him a few points, and that was it. He just ignored the rest.
Hey, what would be neat? Not this episode. You mean things like that?
Right. maybe it could have been a very short memo.
Putting a positive spin on it. Hey, what would be really cool? A day at the beach instead of this episode. And I'm not saying I'm not saying anything bad about this episode. I'm saying if the memo was that bad. I'm trying to think how you would sugarcoat it if you were like, oh, we should just burn that piece of paper to make sure that nobody ever sees it ever.
You're very diplomatic. You're putting yourself into Bob Justman's shoes at that time.
Hey,
how can we spin this?
What would be great? A 3-day bender rather than this show.
Right. Good. I like that. I like your memo technique.
I got a million of them. But please, you were doing trivia, and I would love it if you would continue.
Okay, so a couple of more things to note. The Bible that the Yangs use in this episode, where they open up the book and look at the image of Spock, the image of the devil that looks like Spock, it is open to the Old Testament book of Haggai. and that's spelled Haggai, chapters 1 and 2. And it seems like this is just sort of a random thing. That chapter has more to do with man's priorities toward God, like building temples and that kind of thing, and very little to do with a Vulcan-ish devil. A couple of cast members worth pointing out. Roy Jensen, who plays Cloud William in the episode, was a pro football player, but he stayed very busy as an actor in TV film, known for roles in Chinatown and Soylent Green. And in this episode, his voice was altered. They slowed him down a little bit. He kind of sounds like Ted Cassidy, kind of sounds like Lurch or Ruck, if you've been playing along with Mission Log.
No, he just sounds like somebody whose voice they've slowed down.
Well,
I mean, he really does. Like when he starts going, freedom. Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, Ken as Cloud William. Good job.
And not as Rock. Go ahead. Yeah.
Not as Rock. Morgan Woodward, who plays Captain Tracy. He was primarily known for Westerns, did a lot of Westerns. In fact, he holds the record for guest appearances on Gunsmoke and Wagon Train, more than any other guest actor. He has won several Lifetime Achievement Awards, and he even has a street named after him in Arlington, Texas. And in his spare time, he was a pilot, and he restores vintage aircraft. And a final thing worth noting about this episode, this aired on March 1st, 1968, and NBC ran a renewal notice at the end of the episode that Star Trek would indeed be coming back for Season 3, and please, no more letters.
Now seems the perfect time to announce that Mission Log will come back as well, though please, keep sending your letters.
Prologue. The Enterprise is near the planet Omega-4 when a vessel is discovered nearby. Hey, it's one of ours, the Exeter. And since they're not responding to anyone, we'll just beam over to see how they're doing. Oh, they're not doing so well at all. In fact, they're doing very badly. The entire crew are just little piles of minerals where their fleshy bodies used to be. Act 1. Kirk, Spock, and McCoy, along with Lieutenant Galloway, who is wearing a very fashionable red shirt, wander the Exeter to find something, anything, to clue them in to what happened to the crew. McCoy confirms it. Those piles of minerals are what's left when all the water is removed from a human body. Neat trick. I wonder if the Kelvins know about this. The very last log tape made by an Exeter crew member says that they were hit with a virus from the planet below, wiping out everyone except for Captain Ron Tracy, who is still on the surface. Time to beam down and find Ron. They do beam down to Omega-4 and find themselves right in the middle of a dispute. One group is holding down a man and a woman who are dressed in primitive clothing, and out of it all, who steps in but Captain Ron Tracy. It's enough of a distraction that the villagers take Tracy's order to lock up the savages rather than kill them. Those savages are Yangs, according to Tracy, and you can't reason with them. The villagers, on the other hand, are a bit more civilized, and when one of them references fireboxes, Spock calls out Tracy about how they should know about phasers. Tracy explains that the villagers, the Kohms, are friendly enough, but when his crew beamed down, they started dying. Tracy stayed on the planet assuming that he is safe there. If the Enterprise crew returns to their ship, they will surely die too. Kirk is concerned that Captain Tracy has contaminated the planet's culture. It's a violation of some oft-overlooked minuscule rule called the Prime Directive, and it makes Kirk really upset when someone violates it. See also A Taste of Armageddon, The Apple, Return of the Archons, etc. McCoy is trying to work out the details of their infection. They definitely have whatever it is that killed the Exeter crew, but they're okay as long as they stay on Omega-4. He thinks the infection is kind of like an old Earth biological warfare agent. At that moment, Spock bursts into the room holding an injured Lieutenant Galloway. The Yangs got him with a lance during an ambush. Tracy is right that the Yangs are brutal, but he hasn't been forthcoming about his involvement. Tracy has been using his phasers against the Yangs, and Kirk is about to call the Enterprise to alert Starfleet that a serious Prime Directive violation is going on. Too late. Now Tracy bursts in and holds the group at phaser point. Just for good measure, he vaporizes Lieutenant Galloway. Guess that'll teach him to wear a red shirt. Act 2. Now that Tracy's got their attention, it's time for a chat. He calls the Enterprise and tells Sulu that the landing party are too sick to check in. Kirk tries to intervene, but one of the Kohms knocks him out. When he wakes up, bound and on the floor, Kirk tries to fight his captor, but again, in comes Tracy with a phaser. Now, seriously, let's talk. The people of Omega-4 have got it pretty good. They never get sick. In fact, they can live to be 1,000 years old or more. Tracy sees this as an opportunity. No disease, a fountain of youth. Kirk doesn't like this line of exploitation, and he breaks out of his binding. He's going to answer Tracy's business proposal with his fists. And then he gets his ass handed to him. Time for a new stop on our tour of Omega-4, jail. Spock is in one cell, and Kirk is thrown into his cell with the vicious Yangs he saw earlier. Better cue up that fight music again. Kirk is about to have it out with a fur-wearing brute. Things are looking bad for Kirk, but Spock reaches through the bars and applies a nerve pinch to the savage woman in the cell with them. Her passing out is enough to cease the fighting, at least for a moment. Spock encourages Kirk to work on the metal bars of his cell. He may be able to get out. As they chat, Kirk and Spock note the interesting Earth parallels. The civilization used to be thriving, but a war of some sort has retarded their technological growth. The yellow civilization has been triumphant, while the white one has turned to savagery. Their words, not mine. Kirk makes an offhand comment about breaking out of his jail to regain their freedom, and with that word, the savage Yang who gave him a good beating finally speaks. Freedom is a holy word. Kirk starts to reason with him. They work together to remove the bars from the window, but the Yang uses that bar to knock out Kirk. Act 3. Kirk finally wakes up more than 7 hours later, alone in his cell. No worry, the window is still clear, and Kirk sneaks around to grab the keys. He and Spock go back to where they originally left McCoy, and there has been a breakthrough. There is no miracle cure. The long-term exposure to the planet has already made them immune to whatever infection killed the Exeter crew, but it's no fountain of youth. The people on this planet live longer because it's their natural evolution. Kirk is ready to signal the Enterprise, but who crashes this party again but Captain Tracy? He of a trigger-happy phaser finger, and he destroys their computer. He looks like he's been through it all right. The Yangs have been attacking, probably signaled by the one Kirk helped escape, and Tracy has been mowing them down with his phaser. Kirk breaks the bad news. Look, Captain Tracy, there is no fountain of youth. We're back to square one, and your scheme isn't going to work either. Let's just let it all go. Tracy has other plans, though. He tells Kirk to signal the Enterprise and have them beam down 10 phasers, but Kirk demurs when he gets Uhura and Sulu on the line. You know what we haven't had in a few minutes? A fight. Kirk thinks so too, and he slaps the phaser out of Tracy's hand, and they go at it again. Kirk may be getting better at this, and he may even have the upper hand at one point, but a bunch of Yangs show up and interrupt the fight. They are taken along with Spock and McCoy to a room full of Yangs. The speculation gets a little deeper now. This parallel development means that the Yangs are sort of the Yanks of this planet, and the Kohms are the communists. The parallel is a little too close, as Spock points out, but hey, we're this far along, we might as well go with it. Just then, a Yang honor guard enters the room holding what looks an awful lot like a United States flag as the music cue blares a phrase from our national anthem. Act 4. That giant savage introduces himself. He is Cloud William, the leader of this cabal of Yangs, and the Yangs have taken back their land. As he starts reciting the Pledge of Allegiance in an adorably alien way, Kirk joins in to finish the words. Cloud William is a little stunned, but Kirk lets on that his people have the same holy words where he comes from, way out there among the distant points of light in the sky. Tracy, who just can't keep his mouth shut at the right time, jumps in to say that Kirk and his crew were cast out of heaven, even while Kirk was giving a pretty good science lesson about the problem of confusing the stars with heaven. To prove it, Tracy jumps in with the assertion that God would strike him down if he were telling a lie. He doesn't get struck down. Kirk is the one using the holy words to trick him, and just look at Spock. He even looks like the devil. Fortunately, the Yangs have a copy of their very own Holy Bible nearby, and yep, right there in the illustrations is a guy with pointed ears. Tracy really lays it on thick when he tells the Yangs that Spock has no heart. Well, actually, Vulcan physiology is different, but this is still not the time for a science lesson. Cloud William decides to challenge Kirk by asking him to repeat the holy words. Again, the translation isn't quite right, and Kirk has no idea what they are. He asks for a reprieve, though, asking if the holy book says that good will win over evil. Kirk sees this as an opportunity to take out Taylor again, and hey, haven't we gone long enough without another fight? McCoy is worried, but the fight begins. Taylor and Kirk have their wrists tied together, but instead of Beat It playing, it's time for that Star Trek fight music again. While all this is going on, Spock pulls a new trick out of his cranium, a kind of remote telekinetic mind control in which he instructs Cloud Williams' woman to fetch his communicator. It must have worked because just as Kirk does have the upper hand with a knife at Taylor's throat, Sulu and an armed crew from the Enterprise beam down. Cloud William now assumes Kirk is a god. He's all ready to get with the worshipping. Kirk says no, he's no god, and the only reason he didn't recognize the holy words at first is that they were doing it all wrong. Step back. Time for Kirk to show you how it's done with a serious, dramatic interpretation of the preamble to the Constitution. It's full of heart and sweat and Shatner. These words are meant to be for all people, to be lived and loved. Cloud William vows to uphold the holy words after this little civics lesson. Now to the matter of Captain Tracy. Spock says he is definitely guilty of violating the Prime Directive. But what about Kirk and the Enterprise crew? Nah.
I'm with Kirk on that one.
Yeah, it's okay.
Words are already written down. The words are already written down. He's just saying, hey, pay attention to the words that you've already written down. He didn't go in and correct our Constitution. He just, said, hey, look at your Constitution. Huh?
Yeah, he just beamed in and had his guards beam down. Yeah, I mean, the damage has been done, I guess.
Exactly.
So you have to sort of undo it a little bit. But hey, again, what did we learn from Ghostbusters that Kirk got wrong?
If somebody asks you if you're a god, you say yes.
Say yes. that might have helped.
Yeah, maybe, although it kind of would have gone against the message of the show.
Yeah, indeed.
Seems to me.
You have to wonder if when Kirk was reading their Constitution, he read the preamble and he did it very dramatically, told them how important it was. I hope somebody stuck around to read the rest of it to make sure that other things were okay in there. We know this is an alien culture. We don't know if they got some things wrong. Hopefully they already have the 19th Amendment in there.
You are such a weirdo.
Why is that?
Because it's obviously evolved along the exact same lines. If we're going to accept that, and I don't know if we should, but if we're going to accept that, I mean, they have red, white, and blue on their flag for crying out loud. And though we don't see Kirk count the stars, it looks like there are 50.
Okay.
So, I mean,
I'll buy that.
I don't think we're going to have to go. Now, you do make an interesting point as far as each amendment being added, though. That is kind of interesting. Like, did they get over prohibition, or is it still in force? Or did they even get to prohibition? We don't know.
Yeah, we don't.
Yeah.
And who knows, right now on Omega 4, there might be alternate Ken and alternate John doing their own podcast. It's that close, Ken. It's that close. Except,
of course, no, it's not. I mean, because there's a definite turning point in their society, which would appear to be the dominoes that everybody was worried about around the Vietnam War actually do fall.
Yeah,
which is how we end up. With Serenity, kind of.
Right.
But
yes.
But different.
Yeah.
Or Firefly, rather. Excuse me. Serenity was the movie. Firefly was the show. Go ahead.
Well, yeah. So a few things that I liked here. I remember how I said that the dehydrated humans from a week ago really freaked me out. Well, they, dehydrated humans still freak me out. I thought that was kind of interesting. All the rock salt wearing Starfleet uniforms.
I wondered actually if there had been an ice storm inside the Exeter.
It kind of looked like that.
Just put salt out. It'll be fine. And leave your clothes there, too, so the people... Where was the hair? That was actually what I was wondering, and it's sort of terrible, and I know that would have wrecked the reveal. I mean, once we, figure out that, it turns out those, deposits of minerals are people,
right.
Like you didn't know. But where was the hair?
But you could scoop all of that up, though, and put it into an ice cream churn.
I kept expecting Kirk to be like licking his lips when he got down to the planet. I don't know why exactly. Oh yeah, we saw your crew.
Right.
Anyway,
Captain Ron Tracy. He's pretty awesome. He does not allow himself to be bound by the strictures of Starfleet rule. I believe that he is from the same graduating class as Commodore Matt Decker.
Well, I mean, when you say he doesn't allow himself to be bound by the strictures, I mean, neither does Kirk up until, I mean, this is the episode. You know what Kirk reminds me of in this episode? He reminds me of somebody who heard about Jesus day before yesterday. Like somebody, who's like, I was a drunk, I was laying in the gutter. You know the guys I'm talking about. I'm not talking about people who have like a long, who've studied religion, who have sort of come to it, they've decided. I'm talking about the guy who, like the Bruce McCullough song, excuse me, Jesus is way cool. And I think I left out a couple of expletives there because, I mean, it's sort of like that, 24 hours of just hearing about it. That's Kirk with the Prime Directive now. All of a sudden, he would die before he would violate the Prime Directive.
Right. Right.
And he actually says that. They say that, I think, in this episode.
Yeah, you would die. You would give up your ship. You would give up everything to protect the Prime Directive.
Yeah, and we'll hear that again in a couple of weeks, and maybe it's because they really want to go ahead and all of a sudden sell this idea that the Prime Directive, what's the word I'm looking for, matters.
Oh, yeah.
Because to this point it hasn't. Now, I will say about Captain Tracy, he is like Robo-Captain in this episode. He looks older than Kirk. And we've seen Kirk handle himself in a fight really well. He's got nothing. He's got nothing on Captain Tracy. He looks tired, but he's never damaged. I am thinking somebody should check him for robot cuts.
He gets a little bit sweaty.
He does.
And he has awesome hair through the entire thing.
Here's the thing, though. He is attacked by all of the Yangs. Mm-hmm. And he still comes back and he's like, wow, kind of sucks I got attacked by all the Yangs. And he's like, but you're still walking. Yeah, it's kind of amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, he's cool. I mean, he's and that's what sold the multiple fight scenes.
I don't know if I would go so far as to say he's cool.
Well, it's a cool character.
Okay, I'm with you on that.
Yeah. And the fight scenes
no, actually, I'm not with
cool.
you on that. Yeah.
No, he's not a cool character.
You know what was surprising to me about the fight scenes, honestly? Shatner was in them.
Yeah, right.
In the first season, it's very obvious that he's got a body double. And this one, they actually, like when they throw him against what I guess are sacks of wheat laying next to a building for some reason. When Tracy throws Shatner into the sacks of wheat, the camera actually follows Shatner into the fall and then follows Shatner getting up. And I'm thinking, was this part of the cost cutting thing where they're like, okay, well, Bill, we can either cut you or your stunt man.
Right.
So really, we're going to leave it up to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because all of a sudden he's getting thrown around like a sack of wheat.
Yeah. Tracy has some great character moments. When I say good, when I say cool, I mean that he's an awesome bad guy. He is crazy.
Yes, he is a great bad guy, and he's even got crazy eyes. I mean,
he does. Yeah. Oh, big time.
Yeah, he does that well.
And his bit toward the end where he challenges Cloud William, it's just so brilliant when he says, "And if I'm lying, may God strike me down." I think that's so fantastic. It reminds me, George Carlin does this rant about religion that I can't even give you the title of it because it would not pass the language standards of our show. But you can look it up. And he goes on this 9-minute rant, and it's so funny because at the end he ends it with, "And if I'm wrong, may God strike down all of you," my entire audience. So, yeah, pretty fabulous.
Yeah, that's not bad.
What else is also fabulous is that Spock's got a new power.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, though. It's one of those things that makes me feel like this is a carryover from the pilot. So things aren't quite as well defined. We don't know the limits of Spock's power. And there is actually something written up in the original drafts about how Spock has control over women. And this is kind of an early exploration of that. It's the kind of thing that you would think a story editor, after we've had 50-plus episodes leading into this, would have cut or made a little different. But, that's art.
Well, I mean, it is key to getting them out of the jam, right?
Yeah, well, it is about Spock has done other creative things. It's something we see once. We'll never see it again, at least not played out.
You know what they could have done? They could have had like her leaning against a table and him leaning against a table, and then he sort of does the mind meld through the table.
Through the table.
Like he's done it through the wall and through the cave before. Had there been some sort of, physical connection of some sort.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I mean, at this point, I can't remember what we likened it to before, but at this point, it's basically, Spock's power this week is whatever you need Spock's power to be.
Yeah.
To get you out of your jam.
Right. And I would say that other kind of loose ends that go untied, the idea here about the parallel Earth, it's not really a parallel Earth. It's a planet with humanoids who just happen to have played out Earth's history, with a few exceptions. And this is another remnant probably from that unformed timeline about when the show is supposed to take place. If this was a pilot consideration, there is actually a line that got cut where there's some discussion between McCoy and Spock that these could be former Earthlings who, after the space program launched and they colonized other planets. So if they hadn't decided when Star Trek takes place, and it's not the 23rd century, it's way beyond that, you could kind of make a case for that and say, yeah, okay, well, maybe these were former Earthlings, and that would be a reason to explain a lot of the similarities.
Racism, classism, tribalism, jingoism, nationalism. The number of isms in this episode would totally depress Ferris Bueller. Bueller? Bueller?
You know what would be better than doing this segment, John?
Going on a 3-day bender?
Whatever. Any of the ones that I mentioned before would be fine. Vacation, sure. 3-day bender, if you want to. Whatever you like. We both have a lot to say.
We got a lot of notes.
Yeah. Which is surprising.
Yeah.
It's weird. This is a weird episode.
Mm-hmm.
And it's got a lot of stuff that we would normally just dismiss.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if I'm captain of a starship at this point, and we pull up to a planet that looks this much like Earth,
yes,
Mr. Sulu, hard left, and warp. What can you give me? Just warp away. Can we do that? Would that be all right? I mean, there's a lot of stuff in this episode that we would normally automatically say, and we may end up saying that as well. But yeah. Go, John, go. Just go.
So as is the way that we do our show, we do not share our notes with each other. So, but now I look at this document and there's just like a ton of stuff here because it's a challenge. I'll start by saying that. And I will also start by saying that there are many, many things that I like about this episode, trying to grapple with other big Star Trek topics like the Prime Directive and, all kinds of stuff in there. This Fountain of Youth idea that we get to revisit in Insurrection. But I have to start with some of the things that are just so obvious and so painful. And speaking of pain, the irony was painful when Cloud William starts talking about taking back the land that is rightfully theirs. And throughout the episode, we're talking about Chinese, essentially, Chinese communists, the Asiatics versus the Yanks. But the idea
versus the Yangs.
Oh, Yangs, yes. But the idea of savages and Cloud Williams' speech patterns makes me think, obviously, about the horror of how we treated Native Americans. And then I go, well, this whole idea about them taking the land back, well, if we're saying that they're actually Yanks and they fly the American flag, are we saying that they are colonists or are we saying that they are Native Americans? So there's a little bit of a confusion there, I think, that sits uncomfortably. And you have to wonder what the audience at the time got out of this, or were they just more concerned about the express conflict between white Americans And it was shocking to me that Kirk says the yellow, the Asiatics in here. Yeah. Kirk says even that after enough time, the Yangs and also his own people, therefore we're thinking Caucasian colonial Americans, would look like Native Americans if they were run out of civilization long enough. And no, from an evolutionary standpoint, they wouldn't, but okay.
Well, no, wait a minute. He didn't mean physically. He said, using spears and wearing pelts and things like that.
Yeah, well,
that's something that we see repeatedly. I mean, that's what happened in Planet of the Apes as well, in the original movies, not the reboot, because we don't know yet what happens in the reboot. But in the original Planet of the Apes, I mean, when we come across Nova, it turns out she does have the power to speak, but not at the beginning of the movie. She's wearing leather, and not like sexy Catwoman leather, more like pulled off some
Nova weapon.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, yeah, it's not. No, it doesn't not work. I mean, it's just it's not. She's not wearing fashioned by X fashion house.
See, I interpreted that line differently because he says that line is two parts. We would act like them, we would behave the same way, and we would look like them. We would start to look like them. So I picked it up as like this physical change in them.
I didn't hear it that way. I mean, not that there's not plenty to be offended by.
Well, right, yeah. I'm just getting warmed up,
Yeah.
And a few of our listeners have pointed out the episodes where the dark-haired, swarthy bad guys are up against the clean-cut, blonde good guys. We see that again here, too. We saw it in A Private Little War. And it just sort of it takes the wind out of my sails when I watch this episode. And the biggest shame is that our enlightened crew can only see that the Yangs are right because we are more like them. And the Yangs are the noble savages, and now we've just determined that the Asiatics are the bad guys. Okay. And what I wanted is a more Star Trek way to approach this.
You see, I did not see that the people that were holding them were the bad guys necessarily. It felt to me like Tracy was the bad guy, and Tracy was sort of controlling the people in the city, and so then they do his bidding. I didn't feel like the people in the city would have held Kirk, Spock, and McCoy at sword point had Tracy not been there with a phaser. Now, you see, the thing about this episode to me is we assume, I think, that the battle in this alternate Earth past was, I mean, as you keep saying, Asiatics. I mean, this was the good guys lost Vietnam, and we say good guys because we're the good guys. Right. and it's 68, so we don't know how that's going to go. It's inconceivable that war is going to end in a draw as far as people are concerned. It's inconceivable that we're going to lose because, we're America and we've never lost a war and we've, not had a draw. And so, we helped win World War I, we helped win World War II. Korea was just a police action, so we're not going to count that one necessarily.
Right. Yeah.
We won the War of 1812. We won the French and Indian War. and we weren't even named in that one. So, so the idea that we're not going to win, so you can kind of despite how horrible, Vietnam looks on TV in 1968 at the time, I think we're probably assuming that, given long enough, we're going to win. And so then we present this idea that, wow, what if we didn't win? Well, then here's what happens. Watching it 50 years later, my fiance found the presentation of the Kohms racist. But, with that context of, okay, we're assuming a dividing point that we're not assuming at the time that we're watching it. That, okay, the dominoes fall and the rest of the world gets taken over by the communist Chinese or the Vietnamese or Southeast Asians or however you want to put it. I didn't get the sense that eventually they were bad. I got the sense that we were talking about two warring factions. Now, it is interesting to me that despite, the all men are created equal message that ends up coming out of this episode, or at least is espoused by Kirk, if the communists win, the world never reverts back or never evolves past some sort of pre-industrial state. And you can say, well, that's the war. That was because of the war that happened, and the biological war that, made them all live for 1,000 years. But that war was apparently thousands of years ago. We know this because this guy's been alive for like 400 some odd years and his dad's over 1,000 and none of them remember this war that apparently made this happen. So it's been thousands of years. And, we're to the point of swords and pelts and, public beheadings, very Eden-esque, a la, A Private Little War.
Yeah, it's veritably Eden.
Exactly. It's the kind of Eden that Kirk can get behind, generally speaking. But it's kind of weird. I mean, the idea that we're not going to rebuild past that point. So, I mean, there's still sort of it doesn't feel like a racism thing to me, but I mean, definitely sort of okay, well, if the communists win, things are going to suck forever.
Yeah, well, but I think that's partly why it does feel racist. I mean, maybe it is just the visual cue here of having like I said, the blonde-haired white people against the entirely Asian cast who are playing the Kohms, and why it just feels so out of step with the best of what Star Trek has to offer.
Yeah,
is that I feel like through the entire episode, I'm just counting down the minutes until the white Americans win. And what I would hope for is a more creative, more inclusive, more humanist message to be found here. But even if it's not racism, it's a kind of tribalism.
Yes,
that really hurts. So and maybe I'm using those words interchangeably here, but I do think they both apply. And that is an interesting, it's so interesting. You and I are both kind of getting very wrapped up in this episode, and it's one of those where we really get to step out of what was intended by Star Trek and how we interpret it now. And I feel like one of the things here is the difference between pride and just blindly following the group, blindly following the orders or the tribe or the nation or whatever it is, assuming that everything that your side does is right. Have you ever read Al Franken's books?
Yes.
Okay, so I know that he's a left-wing nut. That's my shout-out for our conservative listeners there, because I know you're out there.
What? All right.
But he's got a chapter in one of his books, and I forget which one, and it's very funny because he's defending the idea that as a liberal, that he's not 100% behind everything that America does. And he's saying, well, wait, I'm just trying to be rational and reasonable and celebrate the things that we get right and call out the things that we get wrong. For example, you go through this list, and it's maybe like a 2-page spread, just line by line. It's like Revolutionary War, good. Slavery, bad. World War II, good. Segregation, bad. And he's got a line for Native American casinos, and it's just question marks. I don't understand this one at all. But, that is a nuanced way of looking at tribalism, of just blindly throwing your faith behind your country, your leaders, whatever, and saying that everything that they do is right. And I think that's what dismayed me about this episode. The flag waving, and it's sort of like that moment of recognition on Kirk, Spock, and McCoy's face. It's like, oh, they're waving the right flag. Well, we have to reason with them now.
No, I disagree.
What?
Well, I think you did what I was tempted to do.
Okay.
The flag comes in, and my immediate reaction is it's checkout time. But it's not because I have a lack of respect for the flag or or the republic for which it stands.
No, and that I don't want that to be my feeling either. But go ahead.
No, the reason I want to check out is because wow, I mean, it just doesn't belong. It doesn't belong here. I mean, this is another planet with absolutely no tie to Earth whatsoever. It's not like in a piece of the action where where this like race of Rich Littles or Fred Travelinas or whoever's like a famous imitator of other people today. It's not like, we left something and 100 years later. Now, when you say the whole thing about, well, it could have been a pilot and this could have been whatever, that's fine, but it's not stated. So it just comes off as, no, this is dumb. This is dumb that they have an American flag and that they have the exact same constitution. And so shut up. Here's how I justify the episode. The first 3 acts, I think, are pretty solid as a bit of science fiction, as a bit of treatment about the Prime Directive.
Totally agree with you.
The 4th act is one mega you see, Timmy. And it's a message against blind patriotism for followers and against using patriotism to do bad things for leaders. I mean, what Kirk said, he didn't just say you're doing it wrong. Kirk said, I didn't recognize those words. You said them so badly without meaning. The warning, that's being issued there is not, let ideas and ideals be replaced by nationalism or zeal. Don't do that. Like, think about the words that you're saying and think about what the words actually mean. That's what makes our way of life worthy. It's not dogmatic devotion to the flag, but a sincere belief in what the words for which that flag stands, for the words that it represents. Kirk's inability to immediately recall the preamble of the Constitution, and Tracy seizing on that reminded me of the stones that people were throwing at senators and congressmen, people who had been elected to office post 9/11 who didn't get on it quick enough to wear a flag lapel on their pin. Well, they must be not American.
Right.
Never mind the fact they grew up here and we elected them and they're working in Washington. They're not, they're not beating their chest in the exact same way that I'm beating my chest. They have to put on their flag lapel or else,
Right.
The whole thing about, this was not written for chiefs. It spoke to me, but I mean, it's two different shows. It didn't strike me as nationalism at that point because Kirk sits there and says, look, this is not just a piece of paper. Don't carry this in a box. I mean, he takes it out. He didn't crumple it up, but he takes it out and he's like, look, these words have never been written this way before. We've been to a lot of planets. We've seen a lot of societies, and these words, I mean, this is basically somebody took the last 10 minutes of Star Trek to say, hey, America, you might be doing it wrong. And so let's talk about, I mean, you joked about it being a civics lesson. It's a straight up civics lesson. It is a straight up civics lesson at the end of it.
Yeah.
Kirk saying that these words have to apply to your enemy. I mean, he doesn't say enemy. He says, it has to apply to the Kohms the same as it does for the Yangs, or they're meaningless. It's fascinating to me. You said this episode aired on March 1st.
Yeah.
1968.
Yep.
March 16th, 1968 is the My Lai Massacre. Now, we won't find out about it until 1969, but something horrible is happening at the time that this show is on. And maybe some of that is like happening back here as well. And so for the writers of this show to say, look, it's not just about the flag. It's about why we have this flag. I mean, to stand up and say all that to me was absolutely amazing. A la, honestly, the Corbomite maneuver. Now, the problem is, it's like, they're two different things. Remember at the end of the Mr. T cartoon? Or the end of G.I. Joe, how you had this whole show, and then you got the last 30 seconds where they'll actually say, eat your vegetables, kids, or something like that, right?
Exactly, yeah.
And that's obviously just so they can, pass off the Mr. T cartoon as an educational program, and that helps NBC, which I believe was the network that had it, because they also had the A-Team, so they had that tight relationship with T. That's so they can pass it off as like community service and educational programming. This felt like that to me. Not that it was educational programming, but this felt like, okay, so we've got this 40-minute story. You've got a 40-minute story. Well, I got like 8 more minutes. I know. Let's preach to America about how America can be more like America, or more like the America that they want it to be, or that we want it to be, that we say we want it to be. Liberty and freedom have to be more than just words, says Kirk. And forgive me, I know I'm all over the place, but so are my notes. I mean,
right.
Because for the first 3 acts of this show, I'm like, okay, interesting. Okay, interesting. Okay, we're just doing like an alt timeline thing, and okay, maybe your prime directive should mean something, and there's no shortcut to eternal life. These are all the things. And then in that 4th act, I'm like, wow, they just exploded a whole show. I mean, they're risking like the integrity of the show just to say to people, don't screw it up.
See, Ken, you're almost saving this episode for me. Almost.
Wait. Let us pause here. Let the computer say something, and then let's come back.
Okay.
Wow, condescension, thy names are Ken and John. Please, don't let me slow you down.
Okay. When last we left our hosts, John Champion said,
Ken, you are almost saving this episode for me.
Oh, forgive me, John. That was not my intention at all.
But
this is not a good episode. This episode is a hot mess. I don't like that term. I don't like that term, but every time I've tried to figure out, this episode is a hot mess. And what's weird is it's only so messy, it seems to me, because Acts 1 through 3 are almost completely disjointed from Act 4.
Yeah.
I'm fine with the Kirk speech. This actually, since the Corbomite maneuver, is maybe my favorite Kirk speech. Because
Really?
Well, because
Really?
he's speaking to us today. If you think this is not happening right now, if you think this is not a speech that forgive me, both the Democrats and the Republicans, and I think maybe the 5 independents or however many that are in Congress and the House and the Senate at this point, need to be shown the last 10 minutes of this. In fact, I think anybody who's serving in any branch of our government should watch the last 10 minutes of this show. Well, maybe just the Kirk speech. All the time. I think it should be on a loop in their office to remind them of what the heck they're doing. And and that's not to say anything bad about the Democrats. It's not to say anything bad about the Republicans. That is to say, this is an excellent reminder of why theoretically we are who we are. This is, again, Kirk saying, this is who you say you want to be. Act like it. And that to me is absolutely fantastic. The rest of the show has issues, but it's not a bad bit of science fiction. I do wish all the quote bad guys weren't Asian, except I didn't see them as bad guys. I saw them as warring factions. And in 1968, we're at war with a largely Asian population. I mean, yeah, backed by the Soviets or backed by somebody else. Okay. But I mean, we're at war at that time. We are Americans. Fighting against a different race of people in addition to a different nationality of people. And so even that part I'm kind of willing to let go. But I mean, this episode does not run smoothly.
See, you were so close there. And I felt like you had won me over with your impassioned defense of this episode. But to me, the whole thing just kind of collapses under its own weight. And maybe that's part of it. I feel like from a storytelling point of view, it just absolutely shoots itself in the foot. I was intrigued by Captain Tracy, and I was intrigued by the discussion of the Prime Directive, and the idea of them being in the middle of a battle zone. All of this stuff I thought was great, and I think you nailed it. You know, you called my reaction, which is as soon as the flag came out, I checked out, and that.
Forgive me. It goes back to what we were talking about in Patterns of Force. Why Nazis? Okay. If this was part of the pilot thing, then okay, maybe it could be the American flag because these could be, long ago forgotten people who left the Earth and did whatever. But having established that actually didn't happen, which I think we fairly established throughout Star Trek that that's not the kind of thing we're talking about. Change the flag. Make it similar. Make it even eerily similar, but don't make it exact.
And I think that's part of the problem is then from a writer's standpoint, it just feels like preaching, and it feels like just a strange, out of place, heavy-handed thing. And again, I can't sort of get past this idea of the tribalism on display here. That's what really resonates with me and just makes my skin crawl.
See, that's the one part that bothers me, though. Kirk actually speaks against that at the end. He speaks against the tribalism that you're talking about when he says, these words have to apply to the Kohms the same as they apply to you. Otherwise, they're worthless.
Then my fingers are crossed.
He's against the tribalism that's being talked about here. It's on display all the way through it, but he is against the tribalism that you're talking about.
Well, and I feel like it's still on display at the end because here we have our Enterprise crew, our enlightened Enterprise crew leaving again. Here you go. Here's your paperwork back. Now we're taking off. Good luck, everybody. You who have been fighting each other for thousands of years. Now the good guys are back in charge. And yeah, I appreciate that. Hopefully they have a renewed appreciation, a renewed understanding of those words on paper to be more than just words on paper. But I'm worried for them. I'm worried for them that the old habits are going to come back very quickly. And when I say old habits, I mean a race-divided battle.
Oh, yeah.
That's the thing.
I'm more worried for the Kohms.
Well, yeah, exactly. Because I feel like, okay, we helped you with the words. We had a great Shatner speech. See you later.
We might both be being a little bit unfair to this episode because I was ready before this discussion to say it doesn't work. I mean, it was going to be one of those weird things where I was going to say message absolutely holds up. Episode does not. episode doesn't work. But I mean, there are a couple of things, and I think maybe we got so caught. I know I personally got so caught in the fourth act. What's up with our good guys siding with the bad guys? And I don't mean the bad guys, like, it's not that the people in the town are actually bad. I mean, it's been thousands of years. We don't know who's good and who's bad at this point. It is kind of funny, though, that our guy just, sort of picks a side. Oh, well, those guys look terrible.
Right.
Those guys, look, they're the brutish, awful whatever.
Right.
And once we actually look into it a bit more, then we find out, hey, they're not that different. Well, guess what? Neither are the people in the city. We've been fine with the people in the city the whole time. We don't suddenly hate the people in the city because those guys are carrying an American flag. It's more like Kirk is waking up the Americans to what it means to be American, or what it's supposed to be American. By the way, shout out to the Canadian for giving such an impassioned preamble to the Constitution read. I'm reading it going, oh, of course, Kirk's going to be that way. And I'm like, yeah, but Shatner's not. Mm-hmm. That's kind of interesting. But I don't know. I mean, it's a tough episode, but I may actually... It may go in that category that we've talked about before of like being such a weird, like sticky, gooey mess, but with enough stuff in there to think about that I think it's worth watching. I don't know that it's going to be anybody's favorite, and I don't know that I like it, and I don't know that I want to watch it many more times, but in its own weird, incredibly quirky way, I might feel like it might almost work a little bit, maybe.
I will only back you up on that to say that it is worth watching if you have seen everything else that Star Trek has to offer. You've seen all the good stuff that is in Star Trek. I'll also say that this is kind of a great example of a what if. What if we had just built this episode around Tracy on the planet and everything that happens in Acts 1, 2, and 3? And then had there been another episode that wasn't doing the Earth parallel, that wasn't doing the American flag, but really does get into this idea of how we apply freedom, how we give meaning to the things that we say are important, the ideals that we live by. Like, this is all great stuff. But as an episode, as a piece of writing, as a piece of TV production, I do not feel that it holds up. And it's too bad because I think like I said, the character of Captain Tracy is great. There's actually pretty good production value here, too. We got a lot of good location shots, like all of that stuff. There's so much here that could and should work, but it's the writing. And if you don't have the writing at the core to support the episode, if that jump from Act 3 to Act 4 is so jarring, so bad that we're still trying to grapple with it now, I feel like it kind of can't be forgiven. That it's got to start with that. It's got to start with the writing to really hold it up. So I say that it doesn't hold up, but even as I say that it doesn't hold up, and I do say that there are things about it that I like, I'm so respectful of your impassioned defense of this and interpretation of it, because it's still taking me more to get over the things that I just found painful to watch here, But let's talk about some of the messages that are here, because I feel like at the time, there are good, solid messages about freedom being difficult, and it is worth fighting for. And the idea of the topics that we have dealt with in Star Trek before about screwing around with Mother Nature, like you said, is another Miri kind of thing, but done better in that respect. Captain Taylor's greed on display as being a counterpoint to the way that an enlightened Federation would behave. That's great. I think all of that stuff is good. I still come away with this icky feeling of white Americans are good and others are bad. It's just hard for me to get away from that watching this episode.
Close your eyes next time.
Okay,
seriously, close your eyes next time, because Kirk says, if you're not watching that everybody who is in the city is of Asian descent, and that everybody who is outside of the city is white, that doesn't come across. All you're getting is two warring political factions. And if all you're getting is two warring political factions at that point, you will hear Kirk say this has to apply to everybody or it's no good.
That line must not have been loud enough for me because I do appreciate it. Oh, and the other thing that I learned from you this week, Ken, is that everybody should have a tight relationship with Mr. T.
Believe it. That's from the song Mr. T's Commandments, by the way, which I believe was part of the cartoon. I don't know. I don't know. As you can tell, I really don't think we try to come to some sort of conclusion at the end. Mm-hmm. I don't know that we have, but that's good because it just leaves, it leaves the channel open for more conversation. Speaking of which, if you would like to converse with us about what you think about this particular episode of Star Trek or this particular episode of Mission Log or any of the other episodes that we've covered or will cover at some point, Facebook, Skype, and Twitter, the handle Mission Log Pod, or you can call us 323-522-5641. That number again, 323-522-5641. Operators are not standing by, but if it makes you feel better, go ahead and tell yourself there are. You can email us, missionlog@roddenberry.com. That email address again, missionlog@roddenberry.com. And don't forget to check out our very nice home on the internet, missionlogpodcast.com. Remember, we may use your comments on an upcoming episode of Mission Log.
Hey, speaking of upcoming episodes, next week, Ken, I know that you're a computer guy. I know that I'm a computer guy. But how about we look into the ultimate computer?
Some of the music for the Mission Log provided by Warp 11, online at warp11.com, and from the album Messages by Key Theory, free to download at kitheory.com. I'm not sure how next week's show can be the ultimate computer. I don't remember ever doing an episode of Star Trek. End transmission.
Now leaving Nerdist.com.